Hi guys, this is Ashish from Edureka and welcome to this 8th video of Edureka's free Angular course for beginners. In this video, we're going to talk about services. Now, in the previous video, we discussed about how to go ahead and implement forms in Angular. There we majorly discussed two types of form that Angular provides. One was your reactive form and the other one was template-driven forms. So without doing any further delay or without wasting any time, let's go ahead and understand what essentially is an Angular service. So basically services allow you to separate your concerns, or you can say that to extract all those common functionalities that is there in your component and put it in a separate class. So all those functionalities like data parsing, data access, logging logic, your tax calculator for any website, what you do is you put all those functionality in a separate class and then you provide that class to all those places wherever it is required. This helps you to reduce the code redundancy. So instead of writing the same logic again and again in all those places, now you have put that in a common place that are called as services, and finally you inject those services in all those components or all those directives, even in other services as well as per the requirement. So overall, you can say that services provides you three benefits. The first one is it makes your code base more modular. It provides you the code separation by separating the common logic into a separate class. And also it makes your application easy to maintain. Now, in order to provide a service, whenever you have created a service, which will be essentially a class, and then you will be using @injectable decorator so as to tell Angular that this particular class is a service. In order to inject that service or in order to provide that service to any other components or all other places when your application, you use a process called as dependency injection. So let's go ahead and understand what is a dependency injection and how does it work along with services. Now suppose I have n number of services in my Angular application and I want a particular service to be injected on a particular component. In our case, let's say the service 2, which is essentially a search logic. So in that service class, I have put some search logic which I want to implement in a certain component. So for that, what I'll do, I'll be using a concept called as dependency injection that will allow me to create a new instance of that service class along with its required dependencies, and finally use all those logic or all those methods that has been defined in that service class, for example your search logic, in the component wherever I am injecting that particular service to. So enough of theory guys. So far you would have learned a few things like this service allows you to put all those codes that is common in general for various components, and then you finally use it in all those places. So let's go ahead and understand how does it works actually. So we'll go ahead and open my text editor. Here I'm gonna run my project and by ngserve command, which is an ngCLI command. So if you're watching this video for the first time, I would recommend you to go ahead and follow the second video of this series, which will be on your Angular installation and project structure, so that you can have a better understanding about what ngCLI is and how to create a new project or new Angular project. Now I'll go to my browser, localhost 4200, and here is my application up and running. Now what I'll do, I'll be creating a very simple demo so that you can understand the benefits of services and how to use a service class or how to create a service class and use it in your application. So I'm going to go ahead with a new terminal and I'm going to create a component, ngg component, and I'll name it as a list. So basically I'll be displaying a list of items, or you can say the grocery list, using this component, and the items that I'll be retrieving for this grocery list will happen using my service class. So basically I'm creating a service class for data access logic. So I'm going to go ahead with ngg service. So this is the command, ng command for generating a service, where G stands for generate. So ng generate service, then you provide the name of your service class file name. So I'm going to go ahead with data, and by default it will append dot service to your file name so as to distinguish it with other files that is there in your project structure. Now if I go to my source folder inside my app where all my code resides, you can see that I have my data.service.ts file created by my ngCLI. Similarly, if I go to my list component, I can see that the list component is over here that I have created just now. All right. Now, as I have told, I want to display a grocery list. So I'm going to go ahead and create an array, which will be a string array. So I'm gonna say item received. All right. So I'll be receiving these items from my service class, which will be of type string, and it will be an array. For now, let's initialize it with no value. That's why I have put an empty single quotes. So there's a no value over there. Now I want to fetch the data that will be there in my service class, and I want to put it inside this items received property that I have just created. I'm going to create a method called as get items from service class. All right. And here what I want is I want to use my this items received, and I want to retrieve the data from my service class. So I'll say to do later. All right. So for now, let's just do this, and we'll do the remaining codes later on. Now let's go ahead with our service class. Here I'm gonna go ahead and create an array. So I'm gonna go ahead with an array called as items, which will be of type string. It will be an array, and let's initialize it with few items. So I'm gonna go ahead with butter, bread, and then let's say salt. All right. Now I'm going to create a method over here which will be accessed by my list component. This method will be responsible for sending the data to my list component. So I'm going to go ahead and create a method called as get items. All right, which will be returning a string array that we have just created, that items array. So I'm going to go ahead with string, and then I want to return my this dot items. That's it. All right. Now, in order to access the method that we have defined in our data service class, which is this method, and therefore access this items array, what we do is we follow a procedure called as dependency injections. So let's go and understand how we use dependency injection and how we provide a service to a particular component. So I'm going to go ahead and import that service class first. All right, from data.service. Now, in order to tell Angular that I have a particular data service class whose instance will be created at the moment this particular list component is being created, and finally, I will use that instance to access the method that I've defined over there. What you do is you register the service to your providers array. So I'm going to add one more field in my metadata, providers. The field is called as providers, and here I'm going to go ahead and put my service class name, that is data service. Now this providers, as I told earlier, it will create an instance of that data service class. Now in order to refer that instance that has been created of that data service class, so basically we'll be using a property, and we'll be using that property as a reference to that data service class or the instance of that data service class. So I'll go ahead and create a property name as data service. You can name whatever you want. You can go ahead with some random name as well, and then which will be of type data service. So this is what dependency injection is. Now using this data service property, I can access all those methods that is there, or all those business logic that has been defined in my data service class. Now for example, the method that I'm interested in for now is to retrieve the array that I have created over there. So that will be your get items method. So I will go ahead with this dot data service dot. If you put over here the dot, you can see the intelligence working on, and it is showing you all those methods that has been defined in your data service class. So one of the methods is get items, and the property is items. I'm going to go ahead and use my get items over here, which will return an array, if you remember. So you can see that this is the method that we are accessing, which is returning our items array. All right. Now let's go ahead with our HTML, or the template of list component, where we'll be displaying our grocery list. So here I'm going to create an unordered list with an li tag, and here I'm going to use something called as ng for directive. So basically it will iterate over the array, and it will fetch each of the item that is there in our array, which we'll be displaying as a list. So I'll say let item, which is a looping variable on which each of the element that is there in our array will be stored, and our array is item received. All right, and then I'm going to interpolate this item so as to display it, the value of that particular looping variable. Now let's go ahead and add some bootstrap class, which will be list group and list group item. All right. Now I want this function to be executed in order to retrieve the data. So what I'll do, I'll bind this particular method to a button. So I'm going to go ahead and create a button and I'll name it as show list and then bind the click event. So whenever this button has been clicked, it will execute that function, which is get items from service class. And then finally, this list will be shown over there. So let's go ahead and check out our application. Nothing is happening over here. Basically, we forgot to add the selector tag, which is a very common mistake. So you have to nest the component that you have created in your app component, which is the first component to be loaded, which I have told numerous of times. So I'm going to use my selector tag so as to load my component, list component. And now if I click on this button, you can see we have 3 elements being loaded over here. Now initially it is showing one of the empty element because we initialized that particular property item received array with an empty value. So that's why you are having an empty element being shown as a list. Now similarly, you can add other functionalities as well. You can add functionality for adding new item. Let's go ahead and do that. So that's what your services does. So basically we'll put all your common logic for data parsing or for data access or search logic or for sorting any data. You put all those common functionalities into your service class and then finally you provide that service to the component or to all those components wherever it is required. Now let's go ahead and add a form. So we learned about form in the last video itself. We don't need this because we are not making any XHR request. In general, whenever you will be using services, you will be using it with HTTP methods. I will show you how to use all those in the last video of this series where I'll be integrating Firebase with that of our Angular application, and there I'll be using HTTP methods extensively. So I'll show you how to go ahead and work around with your HTTP methods, your get, post, put method, delete method, and use it in your service class and finally provide it in all those components. So we'll learn it over there. So basically we'll be building a full-fledged application in that particular video. Now what I want is I want a div tag over here. All right, and then I want an input, and next thing I want is button, which will be of type submit. All right, now I'll name this input as item name, and what it does, it basically, if you do not provide any variable or any property that is there in your component, it uses this name attribute as a key and assigns the value, whatever value that you will be entering in this input field. So I'll show you what I'm trying to say. So basically, all this has been discussed in our previous video. So let me give you a recap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead with item name. All right. I'll say value and let me convert it as JSON. All right. There is one more thing missing. Let's say add item. All right. Now, as you can see, I'm getting an error because it's saying cannot read the property value of undefined. So we haven't defined the template variable for our form. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead with the hashtag form and I'm going to use something called as ng directive. Okay, so it's very simple. What I'm doing is I'm going to refer this form with a variable, template variable called as FRM or firm. And how I'm going to use it? I'm going to use a directive, a built-in directive called as ng form that allows me to assign a template variable for accessing all those values in my form. So that's what the idea is over here. Now I'll say form dot item name dot value. Now what I need is I need to add ng model as well so that we can bind a model with the form or associate a model with the form, and that model will be used to log out the values which is there or which has been entered to our form. So here we are using two things. So the first one is ng form. What it does, it allows you to associate FRM, the template variable, so as to refer to our form. The second thing that we will be using is called as ng model, which is again a directive, which allows you to bind all the value that has been entered on your form with a model or any property that is there in your component class. So let me show you what I'm trying to say over here. So I'm going to go ahead with ng model. All right. Now for using ng model, you need to import a certain module called as forms module. So you need to go ahead in your root model, that is your app.module, and here you need to import a certain module called as forms module from @angular/forms. All right, and then you have to put it inside your imports array. That's it. Now, what will happen over here is this ng model will bind the value that we will enter as an input to this name attribute, which is item name, which we can see whatever we are entering. So what I'm trying to do is basically I'm going to interpolate the value of this name attribute that has been assigned by our ng model. So if I write anything over here, we're getting an error over here. Let's go ahead and okay. I'm sorry, I just did a mistake. Basically, we are referring to some undefined. So basically, we need to access the value of form, and inside that, we need to access the key item name, which is a name attribute. And now it will work. So as you can see, we are having an empty input over here. So as soon as I enter something, you can see that that particular thing is being displayed over here or interpolated over just below your input bar. So that's how I can access this particular value or whatever value that has been entered on this input element. So let's remove it for now. Now what I want is basically I want to go ahead and use something called as ng submit. So whenever I submit this form, I want to get the access of all those values that is there in my form, which is very simple, a single input element, and I'm gonna push it inside that array that is there inside my data service class. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a method called as add new item. All right, and I'm gonna pass this template form variable called as frm so that I can access to all those value of this particular form. All right, now I'll go to my list component, and here what I'll do, I'll create a new method. So I'll go to my component and let me create a new method called as add new item, and I'm going to go ahead with an argument as type any. So this is what your TypeScript provides to you. So whenever you are not sure about the type of what argument you're passing, you can go ahead and use any as your type. Now what I want is I want to call a method from my data service class, all right, which I'll be doing later on. So let's go ahead and create our function first. So I'll create a method called as add item. Okay, basically it will be receiving an item, so I'm gonna say it as new item, and then I'm gonna add it to this dot items dot push, and then I'll pass this new item as an argument. Now this new item will be pushed inside my array. Now I want to return the updated array as a new item has been added, so I'm gonna go ahead and return this as well. That's it. Now I'll go back to my list component, and here I'm going to use that method that I've defined over my service class. So if I now do this, you can see that I have that function over there or method over there that I have defined just now called as add item. Now I'm going to pass form dot value dot item name. In fact, you can console it out as well. Console dot log form dot log dot item name. All right, now let's check out whether it works or not. So let's add few styling as well. So for example, I'm gonna go ahead and add bootstrap class called as button success, and here let me make it as class button primary. I think yes, I made a mistake. That's why the button was not appearing clearly. Now if I go ahead and click on show list, we are having these 3 items in our list that we have defined in our service class. Now I'm going to add a new item called as, let's say, egg. We are having an error. Item name is not defined, so maybe I have done some error. Okay, let's try it again. Now it's working. So basically there was an error in my console.log function where I put form.log. I don't know why. So here how it is works. So now you can go ahead and do foobar as well, add any number of items you want. Now you can go ahead and implement delete functionalities as well as update functionalities using this code base, as I have already discussed all those concepts that will be used for creating these functionalities. And trust me guys, it is very easy to do. So the best way to learn Angular is to go ahead and implement things, work around a simple examples. You will get errors. Sometimes it will be difficult to understand few things, but in those cases, just refer to the official documentation, which is very well written and everything has been well explained over there. else, comment on our videos where we can provide you with the apt solution and help you further so as to learn Angular. Now, one more thing that I want to add over here is, so what we did over here is that basically we wanted our data service class to be provided in this particular component only. If you want your service class to be accessible by all those components that is there in your application. So for that, what you can do is, instead of providing it in a particular component, go ahead and provide it inside your app.module or your root module so that it can be accessed throughout the application. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and also I'll be copying this import statement because it is not recognizing it, and hence it is done. Okay, so there was some pathing issues. Now it is done. Now if I check my application again, I'm having an error, linter errors. Okay, no, it's working fine now. All right. Now if I go ahead and check out whether it is working or not, it's working perfectly fine. And let's add sweets over here. You can see it's working. You can add candy, it's working. So basically, if you want some of your services to be accessible throughout the application, or you have the accessibility as app-wide accessibility, then you go ahead and put it inside your providers array or register your service in the providers array in your root module. Else you put it inside the component wherever you want to inject it into. So that's it, guys. That was all about services. So we have learned what is a dependency injection, how to inject a service, and what is the purpose of having service in Angular application. So I hope this video was informative for you. In case of any question or any doubt, you can go ahead and ask those queries in the comment section below. So we'll meet you in the next video where I'll be creating a CRUD application where we will be again using services extensively so as to create a new data, that insert a new data to your database, for deleting a data, for retrieving a data, or for updating any data that is already there in your database. So we'll learn all about that in the next video. So we'll see you in the next video. Till then, have fun. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!